Hello, I'm Amanda Walker and welcome to Inside America, the show that brings you insight and analysis of the biggest issues facing the United States right now. In our final episode of 2025, we look back at what has been an extraordinary year in American politics. Donald Trump's return to the White House set the stage for a relentless news cycle which has seen political norms transformed at breakneck pace. Trump 2.0 wasted no time getting to work with sweeping executive actions, controversial pardons, mass federal funding cuts and layoffs, and of course, hardline immigration tactics from behind the masks of ICE. Military-level force was deployed in American cities. A full-scale military parade hit the streets here in the Capitol, all signaling that a new governing style has arrived. Abroad, unexpected interventions and an extreme tariff strategy have upended the old world order, leaving allies out in the cold. It was a year packed with consequential moments, and in this episode we're going to try and bring as many as we can back into focus. We'll be introducing our panel of journalists to share what moments they believe have defined the year and ask them what comes next. But first, pace and volume are the standout features of what went on this year in US politics. You'll be forgiven for not being able to recall it all. We've done our best. Let's take a look at 2025.
The 45th and the 47th President of the United States of America, Donald J. Trump.
A political comeback like no other. The year started with Donald Trump's return to the most powerful job in the world. Behind the scenes, the cogs were already turning in the aggressive Trump 2.0 machine.
Yes, sir. First, we have a list of pardons and commutations relating to events that occurred on January 6, 2021.
One of his first official acts, pardoning hundreds of January 6 rioters who waged war on the previous election's peaceful transfer of power when Joe Biden beat Donald Trump. A controversial gift to his most loyal supporters.
We hope they come out tonight, frankly.
So if you could relive January 6, what would you do differently?
I would not have been away from my family, but would I have done something differently on January 6th? There's a few things. I wouldn't have said some of the stuff I said.
Would you take a gun with you?
Yeah, you know, that's not significantly been a situation as far as that goes. I'm not concerned about whether there was a gun there or not.
Why did you have a gun with you?
Well, first you have to show me a gun.
Trump returned to power turbocharged, no longer a novice in the inner workings of Washington.
The golden age of America begins right now.
From the outset, he vowed to tear it all down, declaring an end to what he called the era of big government. The administration moved swiftly, deep cuts to international aid, the National Weather Service, and Centers for Disease Control. And alongside him, Elon Musk, tasked with leading the newly formed Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, empowered to slash and burn.
This is the chainsaw for bureaucracy.
Federal agencies were left shell-shocked by mass layoffs, budget cuts, and dramatic restructuring. Funding freezes hit universities, also in Trump's crosshairs for their diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI programs. A crackdown on foreign students created a climate of fear on campuses across the country.
I think there's a lot of threats going around. I think there's a lot of really nasty language being used and really scare tactics at the very tippy top of our government that have stopped people from feeling like they have that freedom, not only because it would bring consequences on them, but also because it might bring consequences on their neighbors, their community, their friends.
Trump's election promise to end the war in Ukraine did not get off to a good start, with this jaw-dropping Oval Office moment with President Zelensky.
You should be thanking the president for trying to bring an end to this conflict.
Have you ever been to Ukraine that you say what problems we have?
The tense, fiery meeting was just one of many fractious moments with established allies.
People said they should have.
Have you said thank you once?
My fellow Americans, this is Liberation Day, waiting for a long time.
In April came so-called Liberation Day, when Trump turned game show host to push his global tariff plan.
If you look at that, China, first row.
The worst numbers weren't just for predictable targets like China, but also long-time allies and neighbors. The rollout was erratic, but it quickly recalibrated global trade relationships, triggering a wave of reciprocal tariffs against American goods. Within the US, the effects were immediate. How would you characterize the journey so far when it comes to tariffs since Trump took office?
Am I allowed to swear?
No.
Okay.
What better follow-up to global trade muscle flexing than an actual display of US military might? On the president's early summer birthday, tanks rolled down the National Mall in a made-for-TV show of Trumpian strength. Later, US force went into real action, striking Iran's nuclear facilities, part of the broader Iran-Israel war. It marks the first direct US military action on Iranian territory in decades. The extent of the damage to Iran's nuclear program remains a point of contention.
What we've done is put everything into one bill. It's never happened before. It's the biggest bill of its type in history.
At home, Trump marched on to his landmark policy bill, the so-called Big Beautiful Bill. It was a tough sell. The Congressional Budget Office says it could add trillions to the deficit and leave millions without healthcare coverage.
No kings! No kings!
Overall discontent erupted nationwide, with the No Kings movement filling the streets from coast to coast, a rebuke of Trump's ever-expanding grip on executive authority. At the same time, immigration enforcement was intensified, federal power on visible display in American neighborhoods. From masked ICE agents to National Guard troops patrolling the streets. What went into your head when you heard Donald Trump say the National Guard was coming to your neighborhood?
Well, it's just one more lie. He's just playing to his people, trying to make them think that there is an emergency that doesn't exist. He's done this again and again and again. He lies as he talks.
Trump's focus this year has largely been at home, but the big international prize of ending Russia's war with Ukraine looms large. A highly anticipated summit with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Alaska ended without a ceasefire deal.
For the world, it's a tremendous day for the Middle East.
Trump did claim victory after the White House helped broker a fragile ceasefire in Gaza, a diplomatic breakthrough that offered pause but little relief for a region still struggling to rebuild. This came after months of criticism over continued US financial and military support for Israel. In Latin America, Cold War-era rhetoric returned. The administration authorized strikes on alleged drug boats off the coast of Venezuela. Nearly 100 people have been killed so far. The US, without evidence, calls them narco-terrorists. There's alarm over a potential wider escalation on the ground in the region. So, what precedent is being set here?
The U.S. president is asserting a license to kill outside the law, a license to kill terrorists that he designates as such, a license to kill solely on his own say-so. There's no obvious limiting principles. And because his administration has not referred not just to the people on these boats as terrorists, but also to immigrants and domestic political opponents, the concern is how this license to kill, this asserted prerogative, could be used elsewhere.
Even America's closest relationships weren't spared. A highly public spat with Canada quickly escalated as Trump mused on America's northern neighbor becoming its 51st state. Did you ever imagine that you'd be hearing those words, dealing with that reality?
No, I think relations, U.S. relations with Canada, are the worst in modern history. There's nothing like it, really, across the board. And it's largely a creation of one man, Donald Trump.
In September, the country was rocked by more political violence. The assassination of conservative activist Charlie Kirk sent shockwaves across the country, underscoring just how polarized and dangerous American politics has become. Into the fall, government dysfunction reached a breaking point. Congress failed to pass legislation to avert a federal shutdown, triggering the longest closure of the US government in its history. For millions of Americans, cost of living and affordability weren't just political talking points. They were harsh daily realities, something the president has been accused of failing to grasp. In November, a decisive message from voters that what they'd experienced in 2025 simply wasn't good enough. Local elections across the country delivered a surprise blue wave of victories for Democrats, from New Jersey to Virginia.
Interesting. So your family switched from Republican to Democrat?
That's correct.
Why?
I think just because of everything going on in the government currently, we wanted a change, and I think that's why people shot that way.
Meanwhile, inside the Republican Party, cracks began to show as Trump called loyal supporter Marjorie Taylor Greene a traitor over her support for the release of the Epstein files, forcing her resignation. Such fractures raise the question of life after Trump. The Republican Party's future will be at least a little clearer after next year's highly anticipated midterm elections. So, 2025 was marked by a series of aggressive assertions of executive power. Just as we witnessed one shock and awe moment, it's on to the next. Now, love it or loathe it, you can't accuse this administration of being inactive. Will they? Can they keep up this pace in the next second year of Trump's presidency? Well, joining me to break it all down and look ahead are Kelly Vlahos, a senior advisor at the Quincy Institute. She is also the editor-in-chief of its online magazine, Responsible Statecraft. And also joining us is journalist and presidential historian Ray Locker. Thank you both for being here. So I think any kind of year in review will definitely mention the pace of this last year. Kelly, is that intentional when we look back to Steve Bannon, former advisor to Donald Trump, his phrase, flooding the zone? Does so much happen by design?
I mean, I can't even believe I'm sitting here and it's been a year since the inauguration. Right. I agree. I think flooding the zone has been the goal all along, and you saw that on the domestic front as well as the foreign policy front. So on the domestic front, you saw DOJ just going in and ripping and napalming federal agencies and programs. And then on the foreign policy front, you see bombing in Iran. Like, that was unprecedented. And it was just July that this happened. And so beyond that, you saw the aggressive military operations in Gaza met by a ceasefire, which is barely holding today. But then you also see negotiations on Ukraine. You see drug boats being blown out of the water in the Caribbean. It's really hard to keep up. So I think by flooding the zone, they keep the media on their toes. They create this illusion that Trump is doing a lot, which he is, but he's not giving us time to digest on whether or not it's a good thing. And we can talk about that more.
Yeah, it has been a really interesting foreign policy year. We'll go in more depth on that a bit later. Ray, though, this notion, though, we were talking about it earlier, that something big happens and then it lasts in the news cycle for a couple of days, if that. Is there a particular story that you feel was overlooked, that we sort of got over too quickly and moved on too quickly from?
Oh, well, there's so many. But I mean, the thing that really strikes me is kind of the destruction of the federal government's information systems. And it's happening in agency upon agency, where you can't trust the information that comes from this government anymore. And that has an impact all over the global economy. If you can't trust the government's numbers, then what can you trust?
Kelly, anything that has surprised you that you weren't expecting him to do?
I mean, I really didn't expect him to bomb Iran. And I was hoping his better angels, or the better angels inside of his inner circle, because there are folks like J.D. Vance who are more restraint oriented, would win the day. And so I was very disappointed that he decided to be led by Israel, honestly, into bombing Iran, ostensibly to destroy their nuclear enrichment program.
And Ray, in terms of like those old allegiances, Canada, Europe, why is he picking fights with Canada? Why are we having these icy relations now with Europe? Where does that leave America in terms of the position on the global stage?
Well, it leaves us isolated. It doesn't make any sense. He doesn't do follow through. I almost forgot that we bombed Iran. I mean, that would have been a red line with any other president. He did it and he forgot about it. He did it, he lied about it, and then he forgot about it. We don't know what happened to Iran's nuclear capability. It could be still up and going. We just don't know. Remember, we had a deal with Iran to deal with their nukes, and he threw it away. Didn't make any progress, didn't get a better deal, and then bombed him, and then forgot about it. And now he's bombing boats off the coast of Venezuela. Whether they have drugs on them or not, we don't know. He's hiding the videos about the attacks on those boats and the killing of survivors. You don't know what he's doing. And he doesn't have any kind of cohesive plan that he's stated. Nobody knows what he wants.
Yeah, it seems to be that kind of walking the line of being strong whilst being America first, which is a tough one to walk. And just in terms of a kind of repercussion of that, the notion of free speech. And we saw, for example, Jimmy Kimmel come off air, a late night talk show host, and more companies seemingly trying to curry favor with the president. Do you think in 2026, and there's whispers around CNN, certain hosts that he doesn't like potentially coming off air if certain deals go through, do you think we're going to see more of this in 2026? Do you think that these big institutions are going to start to break ranks and move away and defy Trump, or do you think they're going to go the opposite way and really try and curry favor with him?
It depends on how much they see profit in doing either. So if they think that they will make more money from advertisers by breaking ranks, they will. If they feel like continuing to curry favor or sort of like hedge against, bringing in dissident voices to their panels and their programming, they'll do that. You saw that ahead of the election. You saw Jeff Bezos currying favor with the president. He's the head of Washington Post because he knew where the winds were blowing, and they were in favor of Donald Trump at that point.
What do you think in terms of whether they will stick to their guns in the future, or whether they will start to really acquiesce to the president more?
Well, I think Trump has peaked, okay? I think his power is diminishing as we speak. And so I don't anticipate a lot of media organizations kowtowing to him in the future. You look at what happened with ABC and Jimmy Kimmel. They took him off the air. There was this huge hue and cry. Disney caved. He's back on the air doing the same thing he was before. You look at what's happened to CBS News with the appointment of Bari Weiss as their news head. I mean, they have gone down the toilet so fast, and people are going to stop watching them. They're losing whatever luster they had. They caved on the 60 Minutes lawsuit. They never should have done that. ABC caved, and I think people are going, why did we do that? It's not working for us.
I'm interested in that idea that the president has peaked. Will we say that 2025 was the year that Donald Trump peaked? Is it all downhill from here? Because he is going to be the most powerful man in the world for the next 3 years.
I never make predictions where Donald Trump is concerned. He has surprised me again and again since the 2016 campaign. His numbers are down right now.
He's never had great numbers, though, has he?
Exactly. They are down, mostly because of the economy, I think, because a lot of the promises he made about the economy and the effect of tariffs don't seem to be borne out, and regular Americans aren't feeling it. And so at a baseline, they're already preconditioned to be disappointed, and then you add in all of these other events and outrages, and it starts to build up. Yeah. But whether or not he's peaked or not, I would be afraid to make that sort of prediction for 2026.
You mentioned the economy, a huge issue, arguably what got Donald Trump elected, promising to bring down the cost of living. He has not owned this issue. People still have that as their number one concern, and he's talking about the affordability hoax, suggesting that he's just not connected with people who are still struggling every time they are at the checkout of the grocery store. Midterms are going to be the big thing, Ray, in 2026. Can Republicans hope for any kind of success if their leader is not acknowledging that life is still economically very tough for most people?
If he keeps it up, they're doomed, okay? I don't know what turns it around for him. I have a hard time seeing what those things are. They're going to demonize Democrats any way they can. You see it now, they're talking about Muslims this, Muslims that, in the wake of what happened in Australia on the Bondi Beach shooting. That's the card they're going to play. Scare people about illegal immigration, or we'll have another immigrant caravan coming somewhere. Those are the cards they have to play to scare people. And you're seeing it with these continued ICE raids, the presence of National Guard's troops right out on these streets. Everything is so bad, I'm making things better. But people know it's not true. If they go to the store, they're paying more for everything they buy. And so they know that what they see and what he's saying don't match.
What do you think? Is this going to be something that he can rescue here in terms of his economic message? Because it's not working right now.
Well, I mean, I kind of shudder when I hear you say that, because I think in other circumstances, presidents would start a war or do some other foreign policy related maneuver to try to keep the attention off of, those grocery bills. But I don't want him to feel triggered into doing something spectacular to take the attention off of his bad numbers.
But I'm interested in, there's lots of discontent out there. There's been kind of significant protests, but not overwhelming protests. But there's discontent over the economy, over immigration. What do you think, looking ahead to 2026, Ray, could be the issue that really gets people out onto the streets, that lights a fire? Or is everyone just kind of used to this now and just kind of not taking it in their stride, but familiar with the way Trump behaves, so therefore not as ignited by it as they perhaps were first time around?
I think it's building. I think discontent around the economy is going to continue. It's not going to get any better, I don't think. I mean, he could stop all these tariffs and that would really help him, but he's not going to do it because he's saying all these crazy things about how much money they bring in. So he's going to keep doing things that hurt the economy. If he keeps lashing out at immigrants with these ICE raids, that's only going to get worse because people are reacting against that. That'll get more people out on the street. And what you're seeing is everybody thought, there was this great realignment last year. Look at the Latinos vote. That ain't happening anymore. Because when, your uncle or your aunt or your grandmother is getting seized by ICE and deported to God knows where, you don't like Donald Trump anymore. You don't care what he says about the economy. He's going against your essence, your very being as a Latino. And he says, I don't want you here. And that's not going to get better if he keeps doing what he's doing.
Okay, we're almost out of time, but I want to put a question to both of you. I heard Jeffrey Goldberg from The Atlantic the other day saying that this moment in America is one of three things. It's either a nervous breakdown, a midlife crisis, or a terminal illness. Kelly?
Can I say none of the above?
Okay.
I don't like Jeffrey Goldberg's analysis, and so I disagree with the premise, or at least the choices in the multiple choice.
How would you describe this moment in America?
I would describe it as a transformation, and I believe that all along Trump has been a symptom of something that's been shifting in our polity for a very long time. And we talked a little bit about the mistrust the lack of faith in the government, the lack of faith in the elites who have been running this government. And Trump was elected because he was seen as some sort of corrective to that. I believe he is more of a disruptor, and I'm not new to saying this, but I do believe that beyond Trump, which there will be a beyond Trump, there will be a transformation of our government. Would it be something that you like or I like? I can't tell you, but I feel like it's more like a transformation.
Ray, I'll put it slightly differently to you. Would you say that the US political system playbook has changed forever, or is Trump 2.0 an anomaly?
I don't think he's an anomaly, because I think he speaks to things in this system that exist, and they will exist when he's gone. He could be gone any minute now, but those problems are going to still remain, because, as Kelly said, this is a transformation. This country doesn't look the way it used to look, and it's a reflection that this country is changing demographically, and it's going to continue to do that, and people who look like me aren't going to be in control all the time anymore.
Right, well, I think we've wrapped up a lot there. I think one thing we can agree on is that next year will be packed. Who knows what with, but it will be busy. There will be plenty to talk about on Inside America. Ray, Kelly, thank you both so much for your time. Great insights. And that brings us to the end of both 2025 and this program of Inside America. We'll be back in January to pick up the story as the new year unfolds. From all of us here on Inside America, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next year.